Good day, learners. This is Sir AJ again, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we will be continuing the video lecture series for Accounting for Property, Plant, and Equipment Part 2 or Subsequent Measurement. So in this video, we will be focusing on the second concept that we need to know for subsequent measurement, and that is impairment. So if you want to learn how to impair assets and cash generating units in accordance with PAS 36, this video is for you. So again, in this video, we will be focusing on the discussion of impairment as part of the three concepts you need to know for subsequently measuring property, plant, and equipment. So as what we discussed before, there are two models that we use in subsequent measurement. First is the cost model. Second is the revaluation model. Under the cost model, it is measured at cost less any accumulated depreciation and any impairment losses. Under the revaluation model, it will be measured at fair value at the date of revaluation, less any subsequent accumulated depreciation and any subsequent impairment losses. So if you observe, regardless what model you use, there is still the measurement of depreciation and the computation of impairment losses. That is why we need to learn how to impair assets in accordance with PAS 36. As what was discussed, there are three concepts that we will be talking about: depreciation, revaluation, and impairment. So this video will focus on impairment. So what is impairment? The standard that governs impairment is PAS 36. According to this standard, there are indicators when your asset is already impaired. So an asset is impaired when its carrying amount exceeds its recoverable amount, meaning the recoverable amount is already lower than the carrying amount in the books of the company. An entity shall assess at the end of each reporting period whether there is any indication that an asset may be impaired. If any indication exists, the entity shall estimate the recoverable amount of the asset. So ano ba tong mga indicators? There are two types of indicator. We have external indicators and internal indicators. For external, number one, we have significant decline in market value. Number two, unfavorable changes in technological, market, economic, or legal environment. Number three, decrease in interest rates. And number four, low market capitalization. Under internal indicators, you have evidence of obsolescence or physical damage, discontinuance, disposal, or restructuring plans, and declining asset performance. So again, if these indicators exist, then you need to estimate the recoverable amount of the asset and compare it with the carrying amount if it's already lower. If it's already lower, then there is impairment. So when do we recognize impairment loss? According to PAS 36, impairment loss is the amount by which the carrying amount of an asset or a cash-generating unit exceeds its recoverable amount. So pag mas malaki na ang carrying amount kesa sa recoverable amount, then you need to record impairment loss. The question now is, ano ang recoverable amount? So recoverable amount is the amount higher between an asset or a cash-generating unit's fair value less cost to sell and its value in use. So to measure recoverable amount, you compare fair value less cost to sell and the value in use. Whichever is the higher amount, that is the recoverable amount. The fair value less cost to sell is the amount obtainable from the sale of an asset or a cash-generating unit in an arm's length transaction between knowledgeable willing parties less cost of disposal, while the value in use is the present value of estimated future cash flows expected to arise from the continuing use of an asset and from its disposal at the end of its useful life. So take note, fair value is the amount from the sale, while value in use is the present value of estimated future cash flows. So whichever is higher between the two, that is your recoverable amount. In determining recoverable amount, please take note that if the fair value less cost to sell or the value in use is more than the carrying amount, it is not necessary to calculate the other amount. The asset is already not impaired. Meaning, if either of the two is already higher than carrying amount, no need na to compute the other because it is indicated that the asset is not impaired. If fair value less cost to sell cannot be determined, then the recoverable amount is automatically the value in use. And for assets to be disposed of, yung mga asset na ibebenta na or i-dispose, the recoverable amount is fair value less cost to sell. Syempre, kasi since i-dispose mo na, it is just proper that you use the fair value less cost to sell. So, how do we recognize impairment loss? For an individual asset, an impairment loss should be recognized whenever the recoverable amount is below carrying amount. The impairment loss is an expense in the income statement unless it relates to a revalued asset where the value changes are recognized directly in equity. So normally, impairment loss is expense except kung ang ginagamit mong model ay revaluation model, which we will discuss in another video, wherein the impairment loss is a deduction in equity. Then, if you recognize impairment loss, please take note of this. You need to adjust depreciation or amortization charges for future periods. Since na-impair siya for that year, the carrying amount is already lower than the original carrying amount. Since the carrying amount was lower, then for future periods, the depreciation is adjusted. So for example, ABC Incorporated purchased a construction crane on January 1, 2019 for 25 million pesos. The crane is being depreciated using the straight line method with a 20-year useful life and 10% residual value. On December 31, 2022, ilang years yon from 2019 to 2022, that's 4 years, the entity determined that indicators of impairment exist for the asset. On this date, the entity estimated that the crane has a remaining useful life from that date, 10 years na lang daw, and its residual value will be 0. It was also determined that the net cash inflows from the asset will total 2 million per year and that its fair value less cost to sell is 10 million pesos. The appropriate discount rate is 8%. First question is how much is the impairment loss for December 31, 2022? And the second question is how much is the depreciation expense in 2023? So first, we will need to compute for the carrying amount. The initial cost is 25 million. The residual value is 10%, which is 2,500,000. So the depreciable cost is 22,500,000. The original useful life is 20 years, meaning the depreciation every year is 1,125,000 pesos. For each year from 2019 to 2022, you will depreciate it by 1,125,000. So since the initial cost is 25 million, the accumulated depreciation, which is for 4 years, that would be 4,500,000. The carrying amount as of December 31, 2022 is 20,500,000. For the recoverable amount, the fair value less cost to sell is 10 million as given, while the value in use, we need to compute it using present value ordinary annuity. The annual payment is 2 million using 10 years period and 8% discount rate. Why 10 years? Because accordingly, 10 years na lang daw ang remaining useful life. When you compute that, the present value is 13,420,163. That means the recoverable amount is the higher between the two, or that is 13,420,163. If you observe, the recoverable amount is lower than the carrying amount. Thus, there is impairment. So the impairment is carrying amount minus the recoverable amount. The impairment loss for December 31, 2022 is 7,079,837. Okay? So the question now is, how much will be the depreciation for 2023? Since we recognized an impairment loss of 7,079,837, the carrying amount sa start ng 2023 is not 20,500,000. Kundi, kung i-minus natin yung 7 million, kasi diba, cost less accumulated depreciation, less accumulated impairment losses. The carrying amount for January 1, 2023 is already 13,420,163. And the remaining useful life is 10 years. That means the depreciation for 2023 and the 9 years after that is 1,342,016 pesos. So that's it for the computation of impairment loss and the subsequent depreciation. Now, can we reverse impairment losses? For individual asset, the increased carrying amount of an asset other than goodwill attributable to a reversal of an impairment loss. So meaning, pwede pong mag-reverse except goodwill. It shall not exceed the carrying amount that would have been determined net of amortization or depreciation had no impairment loss been recognized for the asset in prior years. Or tinatawag ko tong would have been carrying amount. Pwedeng itaas ang carrying amount ng asset, ni-reverse yung impairment, pero hindi pwedeng mag-exceed sa would have been carrying amount. In layman's term, ang ibig sabihin ng would have been carrying amount is how much is the carrying amount kung wala sanang impairment na nangyari in the past. Okay? So, the reversal is recognized immediately in profit or loss unless it is carried at revalued amount. So, we will talk about that in the next video. So, since it is already recognized immediately in PL, it will be recognized as a gain on reversal of impairment. So, depreciation charges shall also be adjusted in future periods. Okay, let's have an example for this. So continuing the example for impairment of individual asset for ABC Company in the last example, kunwari, on January 1, 2024, it was determined that the recoverable amount of the asset is 14 million pesos. A gain on reversal on impairment was recognized on such date. How much is the gain on reversal of impairment on January 1, 2024? Okay. So the carrying amount, as what we discussed on January 1, 2023, is 13,420,163. The depreciation, as what we computed, is 1,342,016 pesos. Therefore, the carrying amount on January 1, 2024 or December 31, 2023 is 12,078,147. So sabi nga, the recoverable amount is 14 million. So the carrying amount is 12,078,147. The recoverable amount is 14 million. The gain on reversal is 1,921,853. Pero again, yung 14 million, i-check natin if it does not exceed the would have been carrying amount. So let's compute for the would have been carrying amount. The would have been carrying amount is computed as follows. Balikan natin yung moment na wala pang impairment loss. On January 1, 2023, kung walang impairment na naganap, ang carrying amount sana is 20,500,000. At ang revised useful life is 10 years na lang daw. Therefore, kung wala sanang impairment na nangyari, yung depreciation sana for 2023 is 2,050,000 pesos. Therefore, ang carrying amount, 20,500,000 minus the depreciation of 2,050,000, ang carrying amount sana on January 1, 2024 is 18,450,000 pesos. Yan ang would have been carrying amount. Again, carrying amount sana kung hindi nag-impair. So kung babalikan natin, the recoverable amount is 14 million. Since the would have been carrying amount is 18,450,000, then it is acceptable to increase it to the recoverable amount of 14 million. Thus, we recognize again on reversal 1,921,853. So kung for example lang, yung would have been carrying amount ay 13 million, then gagamitin nyo hindi 14 million, kundi 13 million. Kasi hindi siya pwede mag-exceed sa amount na yon. Okay? So now, let's discuss recognition of impairment loss for a cash-generating unit. What is a cash-generating unit? It is a group of assets and sometimes with liabilities that can generate cash independently as a unit. No? So it is a group of assets. So if the recoverable amount of the unit exceeds the carrying amount, the unit and the goodwill allocated to that unit is not impaired. Siyempre kasi mas malaki yung recoverable amount. But if the carrying amount exceeds the recoverable amount of the unit, the entity must recognize an impairment loss. The impairment loss is allocated to reduce the carrying amount of the assets of the unit or group of units in the following order. So kung magkano man yung impairment loss ng unit, i-allocate nyo yun sa individual assets. Una, reduce the carrying amount of any goodwill. So i-zero out nyo muna yung goodwill. Second, reduce the carrying amounts of other assets pro rata on the basis of their book value. So goodwill first, and then yung mga other assets pro rata on the basis of their book values. Again, please take note, yung other assets dito, hindi lang to basta-basta other assets. Assets lang na capable of being impaired. So hindi kasali dyan yung mga current assets, inventory, hindi yan ini-impair. So normally, yung mga non-current lang, yung ina-allocate ng impairment loss. Also, please take note that when you lower the carrying amount of the asset, it should not be reduced below its fair value less cost to sell pag determinable, its value in use if determinable, and kung wala, zero. So hindi pwedeng maging negative. So for example, CGU1 pertains to ABC's electronic division. The entity calculated the value in use of the division and is 8 million pesos. The carrying amounts of the assets are as follows. Building 5 million, equipment 3 million, inventory 2 million. So ang total carrying amount ng unit is 10 million. Since the value in use of the unit is 8 million, therefore merong impairment. The entity has also determined that the fair value less cost to sell of the building is 4,500,000. So in individual fair value ng building is determinable. Again, bakit to kailangan? Kasi when we reduce the carrying amount of the building, it should not be decreased lower than 4,500,000. The carrying amount of the whole CGU is 10 million. The recoverable amount of the whole CGU is 8 million. Therefore, the total impairment loss is 2 million pesos. I-allocate natin yan sa building tsaka sa equipment. Now you ask the question, bakit sir sa building at sa equipment lang? Again, yung inventory, hindi siya capable of impairment because when you recognize that in accordance with past 2 and you measure it at net realizable value, it is already considered an implicit impairment. So hindi mo na siya pwedeng i-impair ulit in accordance with past 36. So building at equipment lang. Sabi, the 2 million is allocated pro rata on their book values. Ang building, ang book value niya 5 million. Ang equipment, 3 million. So ang fraction, 5/8 tsaka 3/8. Now, for the building, when you multiply 2 million times 5/8, ang sagot dyan, 1,250,000. Pero take note, determinable ang fair value ng building which is 4,500,000. Ibig sabihin, pwede mo lang siyang i-decrease hanggang 4,500,000 or an impairment of 500,000. So since nung na-compute mo 1,250,000, hindi mo gagamitin yung 1,250,000. Ang gagamitin mo lang is yung 500,000. Eh sir, saan mapupunta yung another 750? Eh di dun sa ibang mga assets. So since yung equipment lang yung mag-a-absorb dun, so sa kanya mo i-add. Pero kung meron pang isa pang asset dyan, iproprata mo sa kanilang dalawa. Since wala, when you multiply 2 million times 3/8, that's 750,000. Plus yung 750 na hindi na-allocate sa building, ang total impairment para kay equipment ay 1,500,000. That's how you allocate impairment loss to a cash generating unit. Now, can we reverse impairment for a cash generating unit? The answer is, a reversal of an impairment loss for a cash generating unit shall be allocated to the assets of the unit. So pwede, except for goodwill. So hindi pwedeng i-increase ulit ang value ng goodwill. Pro rata with the carrying amounts of those assets, provided that the increase should not exceed the amount lower between their recoverable amount, if determinable, and their individual would have been carrying amount. So again, hindi siya pwedeng mag-exceed dun sa either recoverable amount niya individual and sa individual would have been carrying amount. The computation is the same as nung ginawa natin kanina. An impairment loss recognized for goodwill shall not be reversed in a subsequent period. Never. Bawal mag-reverse ng impairment for goodwill. So doon nagtatapos ang ating discussion for impairment. Now it's your time to test your knowledge. This is our first question on theory. An impairment loss is the amount by which A, the carrying amount of an asset or cash generating unit exceeds its recoverable amount. B, the carrying amount of an asset or cash generating unit exceeds its value in use. C, the carrying amount of an asset or cash generating unit exceeds its fair value less cost to sell. Or D, the recoverable amount of an asset or cash generating unit exceeds its carrying amount. If you know the answer, please comment your answer sa video na to. Question number 2. On December 31, 2020, a manufacturing plant with a carrying amount of 40 million, cost of 50 million less accumulated depreciation of 10 million was tested for impairment. An impairment loss of 12 million was recognized, and the basis of the recoverable amount was the estimated fair value less cost to sell of 28 million. The plant had a remaining useful life of 10 years. On December 31, 2022, there are no indications that the impairment loss recognized in 2020 may be reversed. The value in use is estimated at 35 million, whilst the fair value less cost to sell is estimated at 30 million. What is the amount of impairment reversal that should be recognized on December 31, 2022? A, 2,400,000. B, 9,600,000. C, 12 million. Or D, 12,600,000. So if you know the answer, please comment on this video. So thank you very much for listening and watching. Thank you sa lahat ng mga subscribers ko. If you like this video, please hit like. Sa lahat ng mga hindi pa nakaka-subscribe, please subscribe now and hit the notification bell para maging updated kayo kung mayroon tayong bagong mga accounting videos. So please don't forget that you do not stop learning and you learn something new every day. So I hope you learned something new today, and that would be all. See you sa next video. Bye!